Okay, so, sorry?
18, yeah, 18.
Sorry?
I was trying to remember the date.
Today's the 18th of Kislev, yes, 18th of Kislev. So we are on 21a. We're in the middle of our discussion on the virtues of the merits of Torah versus mitzvahs. I don't like the word verse, but Torah and mitzvahs respectively is the right way to put it. It's God forbid they're not verse each other. They are complementary to each other, but nonetheless they serve as different sides of the coin, and they each bring their own value to the table, so to speak, which is what we have been discussing over the last few classes. So where we left off is, well, let's see how we got here, right? We're trying to understand what is the merit that this woman might have that even though she's guilty, would suspend her demise. So first the Gemara suggested the merit of Torah. The Gemara challenged that by saying, well, seemingly she's not obligated in Torah and therefore doesn't have the same value. And therefore it should be the merit of mitzvah, which she is obligated in various mitzvahs, and maybe she went above and beyond. To which the Gemara responded with a Mishnaic text that implies that true protection is only offered with Torah rather than mitzvahs.
You think the husband, the jealous husband at the Kiddush table, when he's saying
Eishes Chayil.
Eishes Chayil, you think he's going to say that?
I don't know. The Eishes Chayil, the woman of valor, saying if the jealous husband would sing that to his wife.
We sing it every Friday night.
Anyway, so the Mishnaic text, which implied that Torah has greater value than mitzvahs, cites to a verse which is in Mishlei, in Proverbs, chapter 6, verse 22 and 23. And the verse first implied that this, or first states, when you travel, this guides you, referring to Torah and mitzvahs. When you lie down, as the Gemara explained it, referring to death, this protects you. And when you rise up, that is in the Messianic era, this is your advocate. And then it gets to the next verse, which says that all of this is the light of mitzvah, the candle of mitzvah, and the light of Torah. So the Gemara therefore said that the mitzvah is like a candle and its light, and Torah is like the light of the world, the sun. And the Gemara commented and said, mitzvah, like a candle, only protects you temporarily so long as the candle is burning. Whereas the light of the world never goes away. The sun never goes away. The light's always there. And we explained this based on our earlier introduction from Tanya, that mitzvah, the effect it has on the individual is only so long as he's engaged in the mitzvah. As we explained, one invests oneself into the mitzvah. The relationship between God and the Jew through mitzvah is like a hug, in which I engage in a hug and God surrounds me, as it were, but me and it remain two separate entities.
Does it say there that the sun will never go away?
The light of the world never goes away, yeah.
Really not true these days, because suns burn out.
I'm not too concerned with that.
5 billion years.
Yeah, I'm not worried about it.
Sun's good for another 5 billion years.
All right, so I can sleep comfortably.
Now,
whereas Torah, on the other hand, Torah, on the other hand, as we explained, besides the person engaging in it, the godliness of Torah enters his mind, goes into him. Because it goes into him, becomes part of who he is, thus it stays forever. It has its protection forever because it integrates to who I am. Even though, as I mentioned, I think I mentioned at least, that in the spiritual realm, the moment of a mitzvah is eternal. As the Alter Rebbe writes elsewhere, yichud zelamaylo, yichud nitzchi, yichud zelamaylo, yichud nitzchi, that the unity, the oneness created with God in a mitzvah remains forever in the spiritual world, but on the effect on me, it's not as forever as Torah, which is much more forever because it gets ingrained in my thought process, part of how I think, and so on. So the godliness I integrate through Torah is more integrated into my consciousness than the godliness integrated from mitzvah. And therefore, the mitzvah is temporary protection, whereas the Torah is eternal protection. Now the Mishnah Gage text goes on to even more detail to describe the virtue of how Torah sets one on a path in life. So it's the second line of the wider set of lines in 21a of Aleph and Aleph. The second line of the wider set of lines. The line begins with the word he, and then you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 words in, and the word is mashal. Second line of the wider set of lines, and the fifth word is mashal. See it?
Yeah.
Okay. So mashal adam. Let's use the analogy, says the Gemara, of a person. He's walking in the depth of night, in the heavy darkness. There's a double expression of darkness here. Ishun laila means like the darkness of night, and then afela is like a dense darkness. It's even denser darkness.
Kind of like in Egypt.
Yeah, that's exactly where I'm getting that notion from.
Okay.
In Egypt, where it describes chayshech va'afela, Rashi explains that afela is a deeper darkness, it's a thicker darkness, like a dense, almost dense.
Yeah.
It's so dark, it's almost dense. So he's walking in the dark at night, and he has lots of things to worry about. Namely, 3 different things.
It's demons, right?
No, I'm not referring to demons here.
Okay.
Just a person walking down the street. It's an analogy.
Can't see them anyways.
Yeah. So there's 3 different categories of things he's afraid of. Number 1, Masyare is afraid. Category number 1 is mina koitzim, mina pchasim, mina barkanim. He's afraid of thorns, ditches, and bumps. I think barkanim, that's a bump. Barkanim is like bumps in the road.
Makes sense.
Make sure I got it right. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. I'm just going to double check to make sure I got it right.
Rather follow the bump to fall into the ditch.
Yeah.
Yeah, bump seems more. Less the breaks.
Yeah, for thorns, pits, and thistles. Oh, thistles. I thought it was bumps. Okay.
Thistles are, yeah, thorns.
Another kind of thorns. Okay, this is category 1 of what he's afraid of. Category number 2 he's afraid of is from wild animals and from thieves. Category number 2. I'm splitting them into categories. You'll see why in a minute. And we'll try to discuss what they are. So category 1 is thorns, thistles, and ditches in the road. Category number 2 is wild animals and thieves. And issue number 3 is worried about he has no idea which way he's going. Right?
Loss of direction.
Loss of direction. So, and I'm classifying the 3 categories because the Gemara is going to tell us 3 stages of dealing with these 3 categories. So, if he happens upon a torch with light, so now he's got a torch he's walking around with. So a torch deals with the immediate issues that are directly around him. Namely, category number 1, he's saved now from the thorns, from the ditches, and from the thistles. So the immediate issues that are right around him, we can deal with. But he's still afraid of the wild animals and the thieves who hang around at night, and they're still even if he has light, they still might attack him, considering that he's in the middle of the night and he's alone.
They could see him.
They could see him and they'll jump out of him from the bush or whatever it is. So he's afraid of that. Okay. But that's issue number 2 he's worried about. Issue number 3 he's worried about is he still doesn't know where he's going because he cannot see too far at a distance. Sorry?
Wild animals are afraid of fire.
Yeah, that's true on the literal level.
Yeah, you go like this with the torch.
No. Animals in general are afraid of fire, which is why you light a fire when you're stuck in the forest.
That's right.
At night, especially. If you want to camp overnight, you light a fire so that your bears don't come take you. But this is what the Gemara says.
Can't bear that.
So, Kivanchi Gia Amuda Shachar, Kivanchi Olam Shachar. Now, when the sun rises, Nitzil Menachayar, I'm going to listen. So, because sun rises, it's daytime, the animals are no longer on the prowl, and the thieves are no longer looking for their travelers. But he still doesn't necessarily know where he's going. He he comes to a fork in the road, which presumably has signs of which direction to go. Nitzal Lekulam, now he is saved from all the issues. So 3 categories, and Rashi explains them for us, and we're going to explain them as Rashi does. And then I'll use the lens of Chassidus that we explained and perhaps offer deeper explanation.
What if you read the sign in the fork of the road that says, this is the long, short way, and this is the short, long way?
Yeah, actually, I'm going to get to that in a second. I will get to that in a second. So thank you very much. So this is what Rashi tells us. When a person is, the thorns and the thistles are like the least of his problems, right? They're small issues. Thorns, thistles, bumps in the road. He'll trip, he'll get up, he'll keep on going, he'll scratch himself a little bit. The bigger issues, like thieves and the wild animals, and not knowing where to go, that he needs the daylight for, and then he needs the fork in the road with the signs. But the smaller issues he can deal with. So it is. Someone who has mitzvahs, which is compared to the remember the mitzvah is like a thorn, was the flame, and it's candle and its light, and the Torah is like the sunlight. So when he has the candle, he has mitzvahs, so he's saved from the immediate issues right around him, which is the smaller dangers in life. The thorns, the thistles, these little things, because he has mitzvahs that protect him. Once the sun rises, which now is Torah, so now he's not just saved. So Rashi says he's saved from sin and from problems in life. From sin and from problems in life, which is a new kind of angle. Because till now we're talking about, the context is the Sotah woman being protected from her demise. But Rashi is now adding that part of the protection here from Torah is to be protected from sin. And this goes in line with what we were saying earlier, right? When a person integrates Torah into his life, he's protected more from sin because he has the knowledge, he has the know-how, godliness is more integrated into who he is. Okay, so sunlight arrives, he has more protection. He's protection from sin and from stress in life. And that's presumably represented by the wild animals and the thieves. Okay.
And it seems like when it says saved from sin,
Mm-hmm.
and then problems, I guess the problems are derived from the sins, right?
Yeah, presumably,
So
yeah.
it's almost like
They work together, sure.
prevented more than just a remedy.
Right. So I mean, it's not like a merit
If you're prevented from sinning,
then automatically.
sins are derived from. I mean, a lot of problems are derived.
Right. So the stress in life comes as a result of sin. So if he's protected, that's right. So if Torah, that's right. So if Torah helps him fortify himself against sin, then by default there's no stress in life.
Right.
That's what you're suggesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll take that.
In addition to protection.
Yeah. In addition to the protection of mitzvahs, which we mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Which take care of the mitzvahs pranias, the small issues in life, or some of the issues in life. But now he still doesn't know which direction he's going, right? Because he's waiting for the fork in the road with the signs. So says Rashi, even after all this, perhaps his inclination will get the best of him. And the evil inclination will return, and then issues in life will return, as Robert's suggesting. So even after he has his Torah, he's not sure. The Torah might still come back. But once he comes to the end of life, says Rashi, that's the fork in the road. When he comes to the end of life and he hasn't deviated from Torah, now he's set. This is how Rashi explains it. Mitzvahs take care of the level 1, thorns and the thistles, small issues in life. Torah protects him from sin and from stress, but still his Yetzer Hara might get the best of him. So when he arrives at the fork in the road, when he arrives at the end of life, and he's still stuck to the path of Torah, he knows he's okay. This is how Rashi explains it. Let's put on our Hasidic lens and let's look at this a little deeper. When a person is engaged in mitzvahs, so we mentioned before that mitzvahs protect the person while he's engaged in it, because while he's engaged in it, right? While he's engaged in it, he's protected, right? He's involved in godliness. Godliness is, he's in God's embrace, as he explained, right? He's engaged in the mitzvah, therefore godliness envelops him. So if godliness envelops him, we don't know yet what's going to happen internally. But because he's enveloped by godliness, so long as he's enveloped, we know externally there's not going to be any issues. And the external issues perhaps that's what these thorns, thistles, and these bumps in the roads are, right? What's the difference between the issues of the class number 2, which is the wild animals and the thieves, versus thorns, thistles, and the
sins.
Bigger sins, but also the difference is the wild animals and the thieves are living creatures. Whereas the thorns and the thistles and the bumps are not living creatures, they're inanimate objects. And therefore, perhaps I'm suggesting that, and this is alluded to perhaps in Rashi too, that the wild animals and the thieves, because they're living beings, represent the animal soul within. They represent the animal soul within. It's the livingness within me, right? Whereas the thorns and the thistles, which are inanimate objects, right? That refers to like external behavior. So long as I'm engaged in the behavior of mitzvahs, then the behavior of negativity, the thorns and the thistles, that's not going to be an issue because I'm actively engaged in the behavior of mitzvahs. So there's no room for other activity. I'm thinking about these activities. So other activities don't have a problem. But what I'm still left with is internally, I still have the beast in me. I still have the thief in me. I still have the animal soul roaring. So even if my behavior is good, right? In the language of Tanya, it's the levushim. The garments of the soul are in good shape because I'm engaged in Torah in mitzvahs. I'm engaged in the activity of mitzvahs. And so long as I'm engaged in the activity of mitzvahs, I don't have time for engagement of sin. So the thorns and the thistles, the inanimate objects that come to the inanimate objects / the activities of sin don't come. But the animal soul, the beast, is still inside of me because I haven't dealt with my internal desire for sin. I've only dealt with the external, the potentiality. That's right. And that's where Torah comes in. If I start studying Torah and I'm learning and thinking the way God wants me to think, now I have the capacity to hopefully change how I feel too. Or at least I can tame the beast because I have ideas of Torah. I have ideas of godliness, which contain the beast and the thief that's within. And yet, says the Gemara, still this is not enough. Because even so, as Rashi told us, still the animal soul can come roaring back. And only at the end of life, when he comes to the fork in the road, does he know that and he's stuck with Torah, does he know that he's set, that he's okay? So what's this fork in the road, this added element beyond study of Torah? So the mitzvahs, if we want to recap, the mitzvahs, because it's engaged in the activity of the mitzvahs. So the activity of negativity is not there, the thorns and the thistles and all that. But the beast is still inside, right? And the beast is tamed when a person studies Torah. That's what tames the beast, because his mind is filled with other things.
Right.
And the mind essentially trickles down to how he feels. But that can still come roaring back. And he needs that fork in the road, the post signs, to keep him in check.
Isn't there a line in Torah about this, about a man?
Until the day he dies, he should assume he's capable of sinning.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right. That's correct. So that's right. And Tanya discusses this as well, that a person should, right, whatever, I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but Tanya discusses as well that a person should assume, based on this mission, obviously, that a person should assume to the day he dies that he's capable of sinning, even if he never sins actually. Right?
There's that potential always.
That's right.
I mean, the Torah offers it to a large degree.
That's right.
It doesn't negate it.
It doesn't negate it. So what is the thing that negates it? That's this fork in the road. Well, being a tzaddik. But for the person who's not, he has to actively engage in it, right? So what's that thing which negates it? But what's that thing? What's the element that he has to do to remind him that he's capable of sinning and to make sure he doesn't? The fork in the road.
The fork in the road can be two things. The fork in the road can be, here I am.
Yeah.
I know that Torah is the right thing to do, but something in me says I should do the other thing. Lust for a woman, let's say, okay?
Yeah.
Let's say the fork in the road has got a woman almost nude or promiscuous or something like that. And he knows, sorry, you shouldn't do it, but he's looking. That could be also
right.
The fork in the road.
So exactly. So that's what I'm saying. So the fork in the road implies that there's a possibility for something else.
Really
so Torah, right? So Torah, let me put it this way. Torah, the study of Torah almost ignores my animal soul. I'm engaged in Torah study, I'm engaged in godliness, I'm fully enveloped in the connection to God. So it ignores my animal soul, it doesn't deal with it. And therefore, it leaves the possibility for the animal soul to come roaring back because I'm not dealing with it. I'm kind of ignoring it, right? But the fork in the road implies that I'm not confronting it. But the fork in the road implies I am confronting it because it's a possibility for negativity. And I'm saying, no, I'm going that way. Exactly. So, and that's the key element here. This is the final element. And so Rashi describes the fork in the road is the person made it all the way to the end of life. But perhaps this means, perhaps another way of thinking about it is, and maybe we'll connect to Rashi as well, the fork in the road is prayer. It's the third element that we haven't discussed yet. We've been discussing Torah and mitzvahs. Mitzvahs is the engaging in God's activity, and the Torah is to bring God's light into me. Now, what does prayer do? Prayer, the language quoted in Chassidus is Shas Krava, Shas Floisa, the time of prayer, the time of battle. Cheder Shel Shtei Piyos, the sword, it's called a double-edged sword. The prayer, the Gemara refers to it that way. So, because what prayer really does is, besides for asking God for what I need, prayer is a time for introspection. Where am I holding? What kind of character traits do I have? What kind of things do I desire? Maybe I should elevate what I desire, right? And this comes
in the morning service, are we? We say prayer.
So I do mean that, but not every day do you have the capacity to do this kind of prayer. So Chassidim used to do it once a week on Shabbos. Shabbos, a person had more time to think. He's been more introspective in his prayer. Where am I holding? Where am I going? What kind of character traits do I have? How selfish am I? How not selfish am I? Where's my Abbas Yisrael holding? And this comes all after Torah. Because the way, like the structure is something like this. A person learns Chassidus, learns about godliness, and he learns and understands, let's just say the notion that God is watching everything I do. Okay? So God is watching everything I do is a very broad idea and requires lots of learning. So the person learns it in Chassidus before his prayer. Then it comes to prayer time, and he wants to take that idea, God's watching me, and integrate it into his life. So while I'm studying Chassidus and I'm thinking God's right in the whole world, I'm ignoring my evil inclination. I'm ignoring the beast. I'm ignoring it because I'm in a world where God's the only reality, where God's watching everything. But then if God's watching everything I do, then why in 4 hours from now am I sinning? Or why am I stressed out about certain things? Why am I anxious? God's watching me. Why don't I trust him? Right? So then there's the application of these ideas in the personal sense. And that's where prayer comes in. After I understand whatever it is I'm learning, and I understand that God is watching everything, now I got to look at myself and say, how much does my life match this notion of God that I've just learned? And not just on a behavioral level, that would be the first level, the mitzvahs, but on an emotional level. How much does my beast understand that God's watching him? That's perhaps the fork in the road. Whereas you mentioned, there's a possibility, I'm not ignoring the possibility to go to the bad side, I'm confronting it and saying, no, I know there's a possibility to go this way, but I'm still not because I've integrated what I looked in Torah to say, go that way. So this is perhaps 3 elements here. Mitzvahs represented by the candle, the Torah represented by the light, the candle meaning just takes care of the immediate issues because I'm engaged in the activity of mitzvahs and therefore the activity of sin is not an option. Then number 2 is to bask in the love of Hashem's light of Torah and try to integrate as much as I can of Torah thinking, which in some way ignores my beast. So it pushes away, it deals with the issue of the beast and the thief. It deals with the issue of the animal soul, but it's still the animal soul can come roaring back. And how do I mitigate the fact that the animal soul is roaring back? By confronting it at the fork in the road, confronting it in prayer, confronting the hideousness of my own evil beast and say, tame yourself, change that, elevate that, refine that, and so on and so forth. So these are perhaps the 3 elements: mitzvahs, Torah, and tefillah, prayer. Perhaps.
You can also say that God is watching me. Is this my test?
Yeah, that's what I was.
That's right. So that's right. God watching me has so many applications. Don't worry, don't stress. God's watching you. God, maybe this is a test from God. God's watching me because he loves me. I should love him back. God's watching me. I better be in awe and reverence because I'm in his presence. There are so many applications to this one idea, right? And that's what prayer. So there's one thing to understand the idea, which is to learn it, to understand what it means that God's watching me. How is it that God watches me? What does that mean? And so on and so forth. There's a huge universe. How does God watch me? That's hundreds of pages in Chassidus, tens of pages, right? But then the next thing is, like you're saying, what's the application of that God's watching me? That's the prayer part. What's the application of the fact that God's watching me? Take a specific issue that I'm dealing with and take the fact that God's watching me to address that specific issue I'm dealing with, whatever it happens to be. And that's where prayer comes in. Is the integration of the light of Torah bring it to the actual fork in the road when I'm facing one issue with another.
So God's watching me. Am I going to go against His will? Is this a test? Is it a million things?
Yeah,
Should I disappoint Him and do that?
that's right.
I think about that a lot.
That's right.
Should I disappoint Him? He's watching me
Yeah,
because He's everywhere.
that's a real wonderful application to the to
I
this
don't wanna
idea.
disappoint Him.
Right,
He's
so-
giving me so much. He's giving me so much of His patience. All these years that I was secular, I did all those things and now, God forbid, it's.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's where prayer comes in. A person has to look in the mirror and say, what are the areas that need fixing? And how can I take what I learned and address those specific issues, like the fork in the road?
Almost
Perhaps.
make me cry, Why should I disappoint him?
Yeah.
It's like disappointing a father. He's rearing you, he's doing everything he can for you. I'm gonna disappoint him, spit in his face.
Yeah, don't you dare let him down.
That's right.
That's a level, Alan. A very admirable one.
But it's a level, it's a battle.
Every level is a battle on relative to its stage and station.
I want.
The battle
but I
doesn't
can't.
go. The battle doesn't go away. The fork in the road does not go away. The fork in the road does not go away.
Every single day.
Yep. Okay, a wonderful day. And tonight and tomorrow, let's discuss this. First of all, tonight after the dinner here, the dinner by reservation. After the dinner is we're gonna verbring, God willing.
Are the women allowed to stay?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And as the Hasidic wish goes, Lashana Tova, Tikase v'sechasim, but limud achsadus v'dark achsadus. We should have a year. We should be inscribed for a year of success in our learning of Chassidus and in following the ways of Chassidus, which kind of matches what we're talking about: learning about the ideas and then integrating them.
Amen.
Okay, have a wonderful day. And
Amen.